Hi everyone, it's back to the Beatles, and today, as usual, on this Revolver series, I don't know what is ahead of me, so I'm going to put my headphones on and we'll dive right in. Okay, I had a little bit of difficulty following all the lyrics, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to nail the title of this. Let me go back and listen to the opening line just for a little help. That's right, there's this. I was alone, I took a ride. That's not a title, that's not a title. There was something later, something about I need you in my life or something like that. Okay, let's.
I was alone, I took a ride, I didn't know what I would find.
That's the closest thing I can come up with for a title for the song out of the music. Got to get you into my life. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
Okay. Okay. Composer. I'm going to say it's certainly not a Lennon-style song. It doesn't really even strike me as a Paul McCartney-style song. I'm a little nervous because I don't know much of George Harrison's stuff, but I'm tending towards George Harrison partly because it doesn't really fit either of the other two, and now that I have paid attention to George Harrison's voice in the last one I did, I think this one sounds like George Harrison too. So I'm going to go with George Harrison. Am I right or wrong? Let's just read. Okay. Paul McCartney? How did I get it wrong? It didn't sound like Paul McCartney to me. It sounded too strained. Like when he goes up high, I don't think of him as straining on those notes like that. Well, okay. All right. I got it wrong. Number 66 in this 150 series. The genre is R&B and rock. It certainly does. I was going to say it has a bit of blues quality. Even with the brass, I could say it's kind of pushing back to kind of big band styles, big band swing style in a way, but R&B might be a fair classification. The song is a soulful Motown homage. Yes, Motown works. With colorful brass instrumentation and lyrics that suggest a psychedelic experience. Well, as I said, I struggled to follow the lyrics. I was paying attention to the music more. Although the song evolved tremendously during its recording, the end result was undeniable. This powerhouse track was straight out of the Stax Motown genre that the Beatles loved. As John Robertson writes in The Complete Guide to the Music of the Beatles, Revolver revealed the Beatles as master of any musical genre they cared to touch. And just wait for what they would do in 1967. Oh, I have things coming up. In his 1980 Playboy magazine interview, Lennon stated, "Got to Get You Into My Life was Paul's again. I think that was one of his best songs too, because the lyrics are good and I didn't write them." When I say that he could write lyrics if he took the effort, here's an example. It actually described his experience taking acid. I think that's what he's talking about. I couldn't swear to it, but I think it was a result of that. Okay, I'm going to have to pay attention to these lyrics then. Concerning authorship, Paul concurred in 1984. That's mine. I wrote it. But as to its lyrical inspiration, he corrects John's suspicions in the Beatles anthology books by saying, it was a song about pot, actually. Well, whatever it was a song about an altered state of mind, it seems. We were going to record Revolver in America, McCartney stated in August of 1966, but they wanted a fantastic amount of money to use the facilities there. Classic Americans, huh? We thought we'd forget it because they were obviously trying to take us for a ride because we were the Beatles. When the Beatles were in Memphis that month during their final American tour, a reporter asked, "It was said that you would record Revolver in Memphis. What happened?" Paul's answer was, "Little things kept getting in the way, like money. We wanted to come. A couple of tracks would have been much better if we had come. We wanted Steve Cropper, a guitarist for Booker T and the MGs, to A&R the session. He is the best we've heard." It's been documented that Steve Cropper was indeed earmarked to produce the album, but that manager Brian Epstein had canceled the Memphis sessions because of security problems. One can only imagine how Got to Get You Into My Life might have sounded with this legendary guitarist musician involved, undoubtedly recruiting horn players Wayne Jackson and Andrew Love as heard on the Beatles' favorite Stax recordings by Sam and Dave, Wilson Pickett and Otis Redding. As it is, the innovative work of George Martin and Geoff Emerick back at EMI Studios in London did bring amazing results, as Paul himself stated in 1966. When we finished Revolver, we realized that we had found a new British sound almost by accident. A fortunate accident, I'm sure most will agree. Okay. Yet another one that I got wrong, authorship-wise. Just goes to show that you can't rely too much on certain things. I was thinking specifically of Paul McCartney's compositional technique that I have noted so many times in his work. The little bit, and then a pause, and then a little bit, and then a pause, and then taking it off. This one, I didn't catch any of that in it. It also is a little bit more, well, Motown than the other McCartney pieces that I've heard. It has a little bit of that angularity in the melodic line that I noted so strongly in the riff of Paul Harrison's song that I just listened to recently. So those are all things that compositionally, technically, I was arguing in my mind, it must be Harrison's because this doesn't fit what I know of McCartney. And then, as I said, the way that his voice sounds kind of strained in a couple places. I didn't remember McCartney's sounding so stressed. So I thought maybe Harrison, although the previous song was very smooth sounding with his voice. So just goes to show I don't know everything and I can make mistakes just like everybody else. So let's go back and listen through it and see what we find to explore. I just love the way the brass comes in all wonderful and brassy. Da 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 dum. And then as they're holding out this long note, I feel like Ringo is just like, guys, listen to me. Bong, 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 bong. It's like we're supposed to be paying attention to the brass as the focal point. And they really are the focal point throughout the piece. But Ringo just isn't going to be okay with it's almost like he's standing the conductor up front, tapping his baton. Come on, come to order, come to order. Order in the courtroom. And then the way this B G comes in. Which clef am I reading? I'm reading treble clef. Yeah. This G comes in, boom, and the bass comes in at the same moment, and that edgy brass kind of disappears, and then McCartney's voice. Well, I have in the past sort of described his voice as sawdusty. You know, that pine sawdust's flavor. And it is here. I can hear that. I don't know. Well, let's just keep going. I'll make some more comments about it in a couple minutes.
I was alone, I took a ride, I didn't know what I would find.
Fine. There. It's like every time he got to that point, that's what made me doubt that it was McCartney for some reason. It just sounded like a type of push in his voice that I don't really identify with him. But there it is. So, and it makes more sense as we get to the end of the piece where it really gets more bluesy feeling and his voice took on a more blues style singing quality, which again, have I heard him do that? Perhaps. I have listened to so many Beatles songs. I can't remember every single one in this moment. I remember John Lennon singing in sort of a bluesy style. I remember that. I don't remember McCartney doing that. But this push and this stress on these upper notes, you could call it just him at the edge of his range, perhaps. That's probably what it is. But by the time we get to the end and he really goes more to the blues vocal style, we could even say a little bit of soul style there, it kind of pulls it all together and makes it feel like, okay, it wasn't just the fact that he's straining to get to that note. It's working with the style too, especially this brassy band style happening here.
What I would find there.
And the brass chord on that. Kind of like the way he sings this sort of breathless da 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 bum. Like oh, it's a journey. I can hardly wait. Well, knowing that it's about weed, well, isn't that hilarious, right? It's like he had an experience and he just can hardly wait to get back to it. But isn't it kind of written in the style of a love song? I was alone, I took a ride, I didn't know what I would find there. This print is kind of small, I have to blow it up sometimes. Another road where maybe I could see another kind of mind there. And okay, yes, it comes out pretty strongly now that I know, especially that it was about an altered state of mind due to weed, or who said he thought it was John Lennon thought it was acid. Anyway, an altered state of mind due to some substance, right? There's this feeling of excitement and eagerness, and it's kind of funny. I just listened to I Want to Tell You, and that one was Harrison's, and as much as I was taken aback by how similar that composition was like Lennon's Strawberry Fields Forever, now I'm struck by the similarity between Harrison's composition and this one. Well, as you know, I guessed Harrison. Why? Well, it's kind of that same sort of desire for something from a distance, right? Harrison was, I want to tell you, and it's all stress and discomfort. This is, I had an experience and I really badly want it again. I want you, whoever you is. As I said, it almost comes across like a love song. But it's not just that, it's the angularity. Da 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 bum, way off in some other part of the world, basically. Well, you could say it's kind of descriptive of just landing in some other world, or part of the world, or mental state. But to me, compositionally, that's one of the things that made me guess Harrison, because I just listened to an incredibly angular piece by Harrison, and now here it is showing it. It just reminds me how much interchange and inspiration and collaboration, and how much each one of them contributed to the whole, even within their own musical babies, shall we say. You know, this is Paul McCartney's piece, but it's on the same album. I don't know which one was recorded first, but George Harrison's and Paul McCartney's, well, let's go through and let's not be afraid to note some more similarities along the way, because I think it's a nice thing to notice how one influences the other. And of course, I can't say that one influenced the other specifically, but still they were all together and they were all creating together, and it had to have an impact.
See another kind of mind there.
One of the things that I commented on I Want to Tell You was the bass, how it was quite present. And if you noticed, I don't know if I commented much about it, but it has a pretty consistent bomb, 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 bomb. This also has a very similar, maybe not quite so full in the bass, but we have the same sort of bomb, 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 bomb pulsing happening down there. Stylistic similarity. Triplets and duplets. Well, these are not slow triplets, but there are still plenty of triplets happening, which as I have been going through this journey, I've been noting a lot of John Lennon's work being full of triplets. But now we've just come across first a George Harrison piece and now a Paul McCartney piece where triplets are a significant feature, not just triplets in general, but triplets contrasting with duplets. So it's a clearly becomes something that even if Lennon was the one who really had a tendency towards that at the beginning of their careers, it seems like they've all adopted it and embraced it by now. And it is no longer a purely Lennon-esque compositional flavor anymore. It is now a Beatles flavor. These triplets thrown in and the syncopations that they play around with, the rhythmic tweaks and quirkiness and even ambiguity that it adds to the mix. And well, there we have a Beatles fingerprint now instead of just a Lennon fingerprint.
Of my life.
Now, thinking about these two in comparison, and remembering how surprising and surprisingly fun it was with I Want to Tell You, to discover in the last verse the hand claps or finger snaps. And now listening to this verse and thinking, oh, some syncopated hand claps or finger snaps would work really well here. Well, they obviously didn't want to overdo it, so they didn't. But you can hear that just coming through in the style and personality of this. And it's funny to hear how heavy it is, kind of, I don't know if I would quite call it, well, it's not near as angular and awkward as I Want to Tell You. But at the same time, it does have that sort of heavy clunkiness to it. It's partly the percussion, it's partly the brass, it's partly this da 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 bomb, and then a big gap, and then it comes again da 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 da, and so the flow of it is broken in large chunks. At the same time, we have this boom 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 happening both in the drums and in the bass. So we have this heaviness to it, but at the same time, there's this eager quality. Da 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 bomb, and then when he launches up to that note, dum bomb, it's as if we want it to blossom, to feel like a release, to feel like it's going to open. His voice doesn't do that. And I don't know if it's just because he was as I said, at the edge of his range, or maybe it's made to keep us feeling like we wish for that, but we can't quite achieve that. We're kept from that because clearly we're not in the experience right now. We're just wishing for it.
We'll be together every day.
Okay, so here's what it is. It's the brass that is opening and making that note, that chord, those beats bloom. But his voice itself is just holding us tight on that note. It's a great contrast between the opening quality of the brass and the tension in his voice.
I'll never leave, and if I do, I know the way there.
And the emphasis, every single day of my life. Well, I'm not sure that this is really, should I say, prudent to be desiring that sort of experience every single day. What does it say? I guess I have the lyrics here, don't I? I didn't even think about that. Every single day of my life. You were meant to be near me. Say we'll be together every day. Got to get you into my life. If I'm true, I'll never leave you. Oh my goodness. It's better to take it as a love song and mean it that way, really. But, you know, you got to give him credit at least for expressing himself openly. Or is that guitar or is that a mix? I can't tell, really. And this actually brings me to something that I noticed, is that really there's so much brass in here. We don't really hear guitar throughout the piece. There's maybe hints of it here and there, way off in the distance. But we have the brass, we have the bass, we have the drums, we have the voice, and only now do we have the guitar. And it seems like it's this organ quality. I don't know if it's an actual Hammond type organ or if it's just the guitar, but there's this sort of organ quality at the beginning, and then it I'm going to use the term again, it blossoms into the guitar, saving it to the end. It's kind of like whatever or whomever we want that we're singing about, whether it's weed or a person or some other experience, it's as if this is the point at which it arrives. We hear these faint little wisps of it throughout the piece in a few places. Let's back up a little bit because I was just getting ready to comment on that.
Did I tell you I need you?
I want to tell you, this ending where suddenly the voice becomes so free, and there's the fade out, but there's also this sort of flexibility. This is more blues. The other one was more Eastern Indian something or other. But it's another thing that made me kind of go towards Harrison, because they felt like such a pair, such a match. And, well, maybe McCartney decided to create something to pair with Harrison's I Want to Tell You, because they balance so well together, don't they? The first one, such stress. The next one, still this desire, but a little bit more extroverted. Definitely more extroverted, with the brass and the drums and all of this. But still a bit of the angularity. This blossoming and the freedom that comes just at the end, just as it's fading out. It's so fascinating and interesting and enjoyable for me to notice these things along the way. And okay, maybe the guessing game. I hope you're all having fun with it. I'm having fun with it, even though I get it wrong a good part of the time. But the whole idea is eventually we get to the point where we can identify an artist, a composer, a creator, a voice, most of the time, and say, that's that. That's him. That's him. That's his style. But if it's really somebody who is constantly growing and exploring and trying out new things, and their vocal technique is developing, the recordings equipment and everything is changing and shifting, it's almost like we're meeting the voice, meeting the person new every single time. And for me, that's what a lot of this experience is. Every single piece I walk into, I don't know what's coming. And maybe at the end, I feel like, okay, that's pretty familiar. I've heard something like that before. But with the Beatles, every time a piece comes, at least so far, almost every time, there have been a couple I felt like it was a throwback. But each one of these, especially on this Revolver album, has felt like I get to meet this person all over again. Whether it's McCartney or Lennon or Harrison or the group as a whole or Ringo. I guess I listened to one of his pieces too. I did. And it's so much fun to have this experience. And the thing is, I feel like it's not strictly a one-time experience. Meaning, if I were to go through this whole journey all over again, having heard everything at least once, I'm sure I would discover a whole lot more the second time around. And I would probably still get some things wrong along the way because there's so much substance there, so much to be seen, be heard, to discover.
That's why we're still listening to the Beatles after all these decades.
Exactly. And as I have listened to other bands, artists along the way, both contemporary with the Beatles and after the Beatles, sometimes you see me listen to a piece. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I probably won't ever listen to it again because there might not be a lot of stuff there to hold my attention. But that's one thing that I love about the Beatles is that there is so much to hold my attention, to engage me intellectually, emotionally, theoretically, as a musician looking at the nuts and bolts of the piece, structurally, it's all great material to explore and grow into. So, well, I don't know how I ended up saying that here in this moment, but I did. Anyway, this was a fun piece too, and another facet of McCartney that if I have met it before, it's faded into the wash of other pieces I've listened to. Remind me if there's another piece that I'm missing that McCartney wrote that is perhaps similar to this. I'd love to hear if I am forgetting something, but it feels fresh and new and loads of fun. But actually, as I'm thinking about this voice and how I got it wrong yet again, and the idea of meeting the same person many times over, discovering something new, I'm thinking the way he sings here kind of takes me back to the earlier Beatles recordings and that sort of unpolished feeling of just raw rock and roll style, where they just kind of jumped in with all four limbs, basically. Everybody at once, and just screaming out their voices, whatever they've got. There is an element of that, and that's why I feel like saying I don't remember meeting McCartney like this specifically, but at the same time I have my doubts. Maybe I have heard something because I'm thinking back towards all the other early Beatles stuff that I listened to, and that feeling of very potent, intense, and raw enthusiasm. And so I feel like saying, again, if there's a early McCartney or early Beatles piece that is a great example of something to pair with this, or I've run into it, feel free to drop me any comments, any corrections, fill in any gaps. I love hearing from you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this piece as well. I'll see you soon.